What is your impression of Elevator or GoGo working here technically? What do you think?
I've been very impressed from the moment I walked in the door. There aren't very many places like this in West Michigan or even beyond that where you can have sort of a one-stop shop of professional audio visual uh, performers and tech people. So I'm really happy that I got the chance to do this, and it's been I've been felt very comfortable all the way through.
We don't make videos, music videos. We shoot performers live. And there are other platforms, not many, Jam in the Van, Tiny Desk, whatever. How important is a format like ours to you as a musician?
For me, I feel like it's very important. Music videos can be helpful tools for an artist, but performance videos in particular are even more helpful, especially for independent artists in a scene like we have here in West Michigan, because it gives your audience a chance to get to know you better as a performer. So I think it's incredibly valuable, and I personally do actually prefer performance-based videos over the traditional MTV style music video. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Tell us about yourself. How did you get in the world of music? This is your career. How did it begin?
Well, it's been a long road. It started a long time ago when I was 7 years old, is when I first picked up a guitar. And it quickly became a focal point of my childhood and my teenage years. And then I made a plan to make this my career when I was around 18, 19 years old, going to college. I actually went to college for English literature, so that's my degree. But that helped me hone my craft of writing songs, specifically lyrics. But I've also had a very interesting sort of backdoor opportunity with regard to being a live audio engineer for most of the last 10 years, because that's allowed me to network with musicians and meet some important people and build my career in kind of a non-traditional trajectory.
Whose guitar was it that you picked up when you were real tiny?
It was my dad's. So when I was really young, my dad had to go into the hospital for a little while, and while he was there, my mom suggested, why don't you try some guitar lessons? I was only around 6 or 7 years old, and he had a very old nylon string guitar that he loved to play. He played country tunes. He loved country music. And I did end up inheriting another guitar from him that's a very old 1930s Regal Dobro. So it's kind of my personal heirloom from that era, and that's the one I really got started on.
Now, you were raised in Southern Illinois. I mean, Southern Illinois. Was country music what influenced you? Was that what was being played in your house?
Oh yeah, I mean, you couldn't escape it at the time. I mean, this was the mid '90s. Country music was probably bigger than it's ever been before or since on terrestrial FM radio. You'd get in the car and you could dial through probably 10 different, top 10 country stations, and we did listen to that a lot. And then as I got older, I was one of the first in the internet era to be able to explore new genres without having to leave the house. So that developed into interests in blues and all sorts of other different categories.
So you might have been listening to Urban Cowboy, the soundtrack, but you're down towards Missouri. What kind of blues acts were you were listening to?
The very first ones, I mean, I didn't get to experience a lot of live blues or get to know a lot of blues performers in that area, but what I got exposed to in my teen years were records by Howlin' Wolf. Really changed what I thought about the blues. And, when you're a young country kid growing up with country music on the radio, blues music has this sort of mythical status about it that seems like it's hard to get into. But as soon as I heard Howlin' Wolf, it kind of changed my whole perception of what is possible with an electric guitar and a vocal. It was really a formative experience.
Did you want to get up to Chicago as younger guy and experience like going to Chess and see all the blues clubs and Muddy Waters and what was happening up in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, when I was that age, I had started thinking about college, and I really only applied to one school. And the funny part is, I applied to be a music major. And when I got there, after taking years of guitar lessons and even teaching learning classical guitar, I ended up failing those auditions. And I had only applied to one college, so I decided, you know what, why don't I just transition into a different major? But that's just kind of like how I wound up there. And then once I got there, yeah, I did want to explore a little bit some of that history, but I got more of a firsthand experience by becoming a sound engineer for these weekend wedding jobbing bands that were full of like some of the best players that you could possibly imagine, that spent their weekdays or weeknights playing at the Green Mill. And they had all these stories about growing up and coming up in the music scene in Chicago and playing with these legends that I wouldn't have been able to access otherwise.
Do you remember the first song you wrote and what was it called?
I do. The first song that I wrote was actually when I was about 7 or 8. I had a guitar teacher in Mount Carmel, Illinois, which was about half an hour from my house, and he owned a small music store, and he taught lessons, and he taught me these old bluegrass songs, and he taught me "The Old Gray Mare" was one of the first songs I ever learned. And one day I was sitting at home and I just rewrote the words to that. I just used the same melody, the same structure, and rewrote the words. And I took it to him the next day and I said, "Hey, Doug, look at this." And he was like, "Yeah, that's great, kid. Keep doing that."
What were some of the words? What was the title?
Oh, I can't even remember now. I think I just changed it to something very simplistic, like, oh, I probably like the young black stallion or something. It was one of those things where you're a kid and your first experience of being able to rewrite something, you might be a little bit on the nose about it, but yeah, it was pretty fun.
As somebody that loves literature, how often do you write?
I um I write a lot, but I have been doing less of that lately. So my writing kind of comes in fits and starts. When I know I have a project to do, then I will sit down and work on it diligently. But when I'm writing songs in particular, I tend to start with a melody or a chord progression, and then I add the words kind of after that. So I try my best, and this is really important for me as someone who studied poetry a lot, to find the right scansion, to find the right syllabic structure that'll fit that melody. So I'm not jamming too many words in, so I can focus on what I really want to say and not have to just edit and edit and edit things over and over and over again.
Do you write better songs happy or pissed?
Probably pissed, honestly. If you take a listen through my catalog, I don't think you'll find a large number of extremely happy tunes. I mean, not that it's an unenjoyable experience, but I had this joke that I had with a couple of friends of mine that listening to sad songs is like eating your vegetables, and happy songs are like candy. You can't just eat candy all day and be healthy. So sad songs are good for you, and I recommend I recommend writing them and listening to them.
Musically, where would you like to see yourself in 3 years?
In 3 years, I, would like to be making another record, another full-length record. This record that I just did, called Pocket Knife, I did it completely by myself. So I played all the instruments and I wrote all the songs and I engineered it and mixed it and mastered it, and that was a fun experience. But I'd like the next one to be more collaborative again. I'd like it to be more of a one band live in a room kind of feel, which is where I feel like is the most energy, the most creative. And in addition to that, I'm lucky in that I'm also married to a really fantastic musician and songwriter. And so we have plans to be working on some material in the next couple of years and putting that, our duo project, more front and center. So things are moving, and those are kind of like my two main goals right now.
You and your wife, is there a duo that you 2 listen to that you really enjoy now?
Yeah, I'd say for a duo, we listen to Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings are two of our heroes, just absolute heroes. You know, we were lucky enough to get tickets to see them playing at the Ryman Auditorium a couple of years ago, and that was an amazing experience. But what I think is the most impressive about them as songwriters and musicians is their attention to craft and their kind of like old school way of taking their time with something. You know, those two never really rush to put out a record. They don't rush to write material. They kind of let it simmer until it's just perfect.
Boy, you bring up those 2, I think you're on your way. I mean, that's some purity right there. It really is.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anyone else in the world of country, folk, bluegrass that you could point to and say, you know, this is a more perfect pairing. You know, I think those two are the perfect pair musically. Their voices blend together. Their philosophies about performing. It's a pleasure to watch them, and they're very inspirational for us as musicians and give us something to aspire to.
Is there anybody you'd like to thank?
There are so many people to thank. I mean, I'd like to thank the crew over here today helping us out, but I'd like to thank all of our musician friends and the folks on the back end of making all of these shows and records happen. The folks you normally don't see, the stagehands, the engineers, you know, the promoters, and even the bartenders and staff at live music venues. Without all of those people, none of what we do would be possible whatsoever. And I think we just got a real hard lesson in that for the last year and a half over the course of the pandemic. So I'd like to just let everybody know that those people are first and foremost in my mind anytime we go out and play.
Well, please tell your friends about us, and God bless and good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.